party to a lot of briefing, which I was CS'd for certain briefings on AIDS because of the fact that my time track had a parallel intersection of that area.
You're saying that some of this you learned then on the meter?
Oh, yeah. And the rest of it I got in briefings at the org. They had a special briefing, I think it was in January of this year, at the Miami org.
Okay, now back to the psych bust. What was the psych bust? You told us about how you were going to rid the planet of psychiatry.
Well, we were also supposed to do certain things to discredit various suppressive psychiatrists. Writing letters. I had to write a letter, for example, to President Cossiga of Italy about a psychiatrist in Italy who who was actually trying to drive the Church of Scientology out of Milan. And my project was to discredit the psychiatrist by making up some stories about some homosexual affair he had, you know, which was easy for me to do because I was the one. I was assigned to this because of my own case. Don't forget, I was the one who convinced Judas Iscariot to betray Christ. Judas Iscariot and Jesus Christ were homosexual lovers. You know that. And I convinced Judas that Christ was having an imaginary affair with another guy, when in fact he wasn't. He was really faithful to Judas. And Judas, in his rage, betrayed him. It had nothing to do with money. It had to do with the fact that he was very much in love with Christ. And that's how Judas betrayed him, because I talked him into it. So it was very easy for me to write the letter to the president of Italy, or prime minister, I forget what he was. Cossiga was his name, indicating the psychiatrist had had a homosexual affair with a nephew of mine, you know. And it was all mocked up. It was a mock-up process. But it was necessary because if enough people did this, it would discredit the lines of this psychiatrist who was destroying the church in Italy, in Milan.
Was this another example of the greatest good for the greatest number?
Absolutely. Because who the hell gives a damn about this psychiatrist if the whole city of Milan was at risk of not being cleared? You follow?
You think you did anything wrong there?
No way. I would do it again. The psychiatrist was an SP.
What's an SP?
Suppressive. You have no idea how much this psychiatrist did on the whole track. I read the briefing. I mean, this guy was something else. He was one of the people on Exolia who bred us for a planet, who bred us for food so that the higher intelligences could eat. We're doing the same thing right now with veal on this planet. We're no better. But the fact is, these were actual thetans in bodies being bred until they were 15 years old as food on Exolia, so that the higher intelligences who knew more, who had better knowingness, could eat. They ate the people. And this damn psychiatrist from Milan was the one who did that. And he deserved it.
What sort of a briefing was it where you were told about this?
Oh, the briefing was an intensive briefing at the org. So they came down, the technical team from FLAG came down, and there was very few people in the briefing. It was my, I had to be there. Actually, they were briefed individually. There were appointments made with individual Scientologists in order to brief them on what they individually had to do to help the third dynamic. And my briefing session involved understanding the why, the hidden why about this psych suppressive, and exactly why it was important for me to do it, because my hat was the way I got Jesus out of the way in the last lifetime. I had to do the same thing basically without getting personally involved in the issue.
How would people know that that was part of your whole track?
What do you mean?
That you had this particular skill, that you had gotten rid of Jesus in that way?
Because it was part of my OWs.
What do you mean by OW?
I wrote them up as overt withholds.
What is an OW?
An overt withhold is a confessional write-up. It's like a KR, a knowledge report, that you write up to ethics, to HCO, and to your auditor. And there's like 4 copies of a OW, you know.
So every time you discovered something?
Every time you either commit a crime against Scientology, or you've discovered something you've done to hurt the greatest good for the greatest number of dynamics, basically that's the reason for any OW.
And what would happen to these OWs? Would they become part of some file?
It would be part of CF, Central Files.
What about
And-
part of your case? Would it become part of your case file?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I would go. My case file was always being reviewed. You don't know how many times the case file was missing because it had to go to INT.
Yeah.
So, International Management, which was the highest management. That's like WDC INT, actually, particularly. WDC INT is the watchdog committee for international management. And my file was always being sent up there because I was basically a pretty hot property, you know, because of who I was in respect to Christ's Father, because of the fact that I was an FP, which is a specialized financial planner doing certain work for the orgs, and because of the fact that I was wearing quite a few different strategic hats, which came under the purview of the GO and then later of the OSA. Plus the fact that very few people have been briefed by the top-level execs at FLAG about a major project. Do you know anyone else who could possibly have cleared half the planet and who will with this book? Do you know anybody else who's going to clear half of Earth? No. No. But this book's going to do it, with or without Scientology. The greatest good for the greatest number of dynamics right now, believe it or not. Believe it or not, the greatest good is, even if Scientology declares me to be as SP, I'm still going to wear my hat. And I'm still going to be a Scientologist, and Ron is going to be proud of me. Because no matter what happens with some of the flubs that occurred and some of the things that I did in not following my ethics handling correctly, and I admit them, I write up my own OWs now, you know.
With that in mind, keeping in mind the importance of what you're doing, let's just think of that and hold it aside for a second. And if you would tell us about the various contacts that Scientology has had with you after your arrest and what it is that you've been instructed to do. Can you tell me that story for a few minutes?
Yes. I've been instructed to do an EOC, which is an end of cycle.
Meaning?
Kill myself. Suicide.
When were you first instructed to do that? Well, tell us what happened after you were arrested and then released on bail.
Okay. Well, there's the notes right there.
But just tell us about it now.
Why do
Okay.
you have these notes?
For you.
Okay, I asked you to do this, right?
Yes, you did. After when I was arrested, I tried to call Ray Jordan from the jail, and he wouldn't accept the call. Well, basically, in a nutshell, without going through the 12 pages of notes there, INT management now feels, their position right now is that I could cause Scientology a greater embarrassment than I could possibly do good for them. I disagree with that position. They feel that right now, because I've been arrested, and because there's a flap about this class action lawsuits, that I could cause them the greatest harm rather than the greatest good.
Is this what you were told?
Yeah, I was told that by Humberto Fontana, the DSA Miami. No INT management execs have contacted me